Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. I do have one quick favor before we get to the video that you came here for, and that is very simply this. You see that little red subscribe button below this video? Go ahead, smash that subscribe button. It really does help me. It really does help this channel grow and my audience grow. So go ahead and hit that red subscribe button. And now, here is the video that you came here for. It is spring football, and over the last couple weeks, we have gotten a lot of spring practices coming to an end. So last Saturday, we had a Texas A&M spring game. We had a Clemson spring game. And because of it, we got conversations with Dabo Swinney, with Jimbo Fisher. Some interesting things came out of those press conferences and press availabilities. Well, this week, we have a couple big spring games in their own rights as Alabama, Ohio State, among the many programs across college football that are going to have spring games. And so why do I bring it up? No, it's not to break down a spring game or preview that. I will leave that to the other people that do that kind of stuff. That's not what we do on this show. But what we do is talk interesting things. We do talk interesting conversations, interesting topics, and interesting comments. And I thought we got some really interesting comments from Nick Saban this week on the state of college sports. Nick Saban, again, Alabama is set to have their spring game. And so Nick Saban's doing interviews and doing media availabilities that frankly, this is the last time we'll probably hear from Nick Saban until SEC Media Days. And so because of it, when he speaks, we listen. And this specific week, I thought he said something very, very, very interesting about not only NIL, but the state of college sports as a whole. So what did Nick Saban say? Well, here is what Nick Saban said in an interview with Ralph Russo of the AP. Here is what Nick Saban said. The concept of name, image, likeness was for our players to be able to use their name, image, and likeness to create opportunities for themselves. That's what it was, Saban said. But that creates a situation where you can basically buy players. You can do it in recruiting. I mean, if that's what we want college football to be, I don't know. And you can also get players to get in the transfer portal to see if they can get more money someplace else than they can get at your place. In total, Nick Saban said 88 words there. But I thought they were very poignant, 88 words in which he criticized the current state of college sports, the current state of NIL, which we know is out of control, and really more importantly, he has followed in a line, I believe, over the last 2-3 weeks of the biggest names in college sports calling out where we are in college sports right now, specifically with the portal and specifically with NIL. I was at the Final Four. Coach K, very critical of Mark Emmert and the leadership in Indianapolis. Dabo Swinney last week. I focused on the transfer stuff on Monday, but he was very critical of the leadership in college sports. Lane Kiffin has called out the leadership in college sports. And so I bring it up because Nick Saban's comments are the latest from one of the biggest names in college sports calling out where we are and where we're going. And I love it, and I believe that this is a bigger, more complicated, more detailed conversation that we need to have. First of all, in terms of Nick Saban's comments, I'll tell you this, I think he's right. And, I joke about all the time about saying controversial things, doing controversial things. I think the way that NIL was intended was one of the least controversial things that I can ever remember. I have yet to really speak to anybody that is just like, players don't deserve to get paid at all. I mean, I'm sure there are some people somewhere that believe that room and board is enough in today's day and age, but I do think the way that NIL was intended, I think we all kind of agreed was a good thing. If Oscar Tshiebwe is a National Player of the Year and is creating insane revenue for Kentucky basketball and is averaging 18 and 15 and is clearly one of the biggest names in the sport, he deserves to make a little bit of extra money when it's clear how much money, how much revenue he is creating for the University of Kentucky. Same with Bryce Young, the quarterback at Alabama. Gets in, quarterback, Heisman Trophy as a sophomore, has to come back by NFL draft rules for another season. He should be able to make money. He's the quarterback at Alabama, and he is one of the most gifted players in the sport. And you can go across the rest of college football. C.J. Stroud, Caleb Williams, college basketball, the guys that might come back, Armando Bacot, which we're going to talk about in a minute, Johnny Juzang. We all kind of agreed that NIL was a good thing. I still haven't heard very many people argue that it was a bad thing or that it should not happen What we didn't want, though, is exactly what it has become, which is all the conversations that we've had on this show and all the other shows that you guys and girls listen to really over the last 2 months. It was never intended to be a recruiting tool. It was never intended to be the best recruits go to the highest bidder. Yet with no guardrails, when we put an NIL on July 1st of last year, that's obviously what it became. We know the reports that are out there, and we know some of it is true at this point, right? We know that there is a contract out there for an elite high school quarterback to make $8 million over the course of the next 4 years. We believe it's the kid Nico that's headed to Tennessee. We're not 100% positive, but we're basically positive. The Texas A&M rumors. We know for a fact that Texas NIL is a huge part of how they're selling high school football recruits in what was the 5th-ranked recruiting class in college football. So we can bury our heads in the sand, or we can readily admit this has already completely spun out of control. And I think to Nick Saban's point, what I'm curious about is what are the next steps? Because this ain't going anywhere. You know, I keep hearing this narrative that, the market will correct itself. Wait until Tennessee pays $8 million for a quarterback and it doesn't work out. Have you watched college football? I don't think the market's going to correct itself at all for a couple reasons. First of all, we don't even know what the market is, and this is still the problem. It's all under wraps. We don't have any idea. These collectives are kind of working in the dark, and I don't blame any individual school. These are the rules that we have allowed. I don't blame Tennessee. I don't blame Texas. I don't blame Texas A&M. I don't blame Oregon, who, oh, by the way, 5-star offensive tackle committed last week. It became very clear it was due to the work of that collective. But at the same time, the idea that the market's going to correct itself, no, it's not, because first of all, we don't know what the market is. So if you're a quarterback and you say so-and-so offered me $8 million, can you give me 10? Somebody's going to do it. You mean to tell me Texas ain't going to do it? You mean to tell me, I don't know, I'm just throwing stuff against the wall here, but a good enough player, like the idea that we're just going to stop, that because one guy is a bust, we're not going to pay guys whatever they're asking for, you're out of your mind. And so the question becomes, where does it go next? Because you think about all the unintended consequences of what's going on right now. I was talking to somebody about this pretty high up in college football. I said to him, if I was, I think, people have this idea that Tennessee, because they got this franchise game-changing quarterback, he's a galvanizer. He's going to be able to bring in all sorts of guys to come ahead and play with him. I actually think it's the opposite. I think Tennessee's going to really struggle to recruit because we all know the quarterback's getting $8 million. So you think if I'm a parent of a 5-star or a 4-star wide receiver or a 4-star cornerback or a 4-star safety or a 4-star linebacker, you think I'm sending my kid to Tennessee for free? You must be out of your mind. I might not get $8 million, but I'm going to sit there and say, my son's a 5-star wide receiver. He needs somebody to throw to. That's got to be worth at least 2 to you. It's got to be at least worth 2.5. It's got to be at least worth 1.5. Let's find a number that we can agree upon. And if not, I'll go somewhere else. Same with Texas A&M. I'm not saying Texas A&M did anything, but what I am saying is it's going to be tough to recruit in 2023, and I know they're recruiting pretty well, but the point is, I guarantee there's a lot of parents saying, I heard what you guys paid. I don't know if it's true, but what do you got for me? And so you start to think about all these unintended consequences. You start to think about all these schools falling behind. I find it interesting. Just in the last probably 2 weeks, I've read 3, 4, 5 articles about all these schools that are now kind of rushing out these collectives because they feel like they're falling behind. They feel like if we don't got a pot of money ready to go and calling it NIL, we're not going to get recruits. I can tell you, I know of one prominent college coach that was on the phone with boosters, on Zoom with boosters, basically saying, we are falling behind. You guys got to get a plan in place because we are not going to be able to get the players that we need to compete at the level that you want to compete at if we don't get going. And so the question becomes, what's next and where is this going? Think about where college sports was even 2, 3, 4 years ago, and think about where it could be 2, 3, 4 years from now. I mean, are we going to have $30 million recruiting classes? Are we going to have, an $8 million quarterback where maybe he doesn't work out? Now you got to pay $8 million for the next guy. Where are we going? And so again, you know what this else speaks to me? We have no leadership in all of these comments. Coach K's comments at the Final Four, Dabo Swinney's comments, Nick Saban's comments, they all speak to one thing. We don't have leadership in college sports. And this is the first time as a fan of college sports that I am worried about the future of college sports. Now look, as long as we play college football, Alabama, Texas A&M, LSU, Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, USC, they're going to put butts in the seats. Same with college basketball, Kentucky, UConn, Arkansas, UCLA, whoever. But where are we going? And more importantly, where is the leadership? I talked about this briefly a few weeks ago when I was at the Final Four. But at the same time, I remember being in a press conference with Mark Emmert. And you talk about deflections. He had a press conference at the Final Four. Mark Emmert, the leader of the NCAA. He had a press conference at the Final Four. 40-something minutes. He has asked every single big question about every single big topic, and all the guy did was deflect all press conference long. By the way, I'm sitting there holding up my hand trying to get in a question. Nobody lets me talk. I think they were afraid I was going to ask a tough question. And by the way, the media did ask tough questions. He just didn't answer them. But I bring it up because you should have listened to this press conference. If you can find audio of it, go back and listen. It was unbelievable. He's asked about NIL. What are we doing? How are we going to fix this? What's the plan? Well, it's kind of up to the states, and it's kind of out of my control. What are you talking about? Give us something, Mark Emmert. Ask him about the transfer portal. Well, this is what the college presidents want. We all agreed upon it. It wasn't my decision alone. No answer there. Transgender athletes, a topic we haven't really talked about on this show. Well, we follow the Olympic model, and the Olympics decide, and when the Olympics change there, it's like, oh, my God, Mark Emmert. You know what it reminded me of listening to him? It reminded me of the old John Calipari saying, and I might have said this on the show a few weeks ago. John Calipari has a famous saying. He says, if I put you in the game, you don't got to make every shot, but you just can't miss them all. That was the thing with Mark Emmert when I was watching. I was like, Mark Emmert, you don't have to have an answer to every single question. You just can't have an answer to none of them. And this guy has no answers. This guy is deflecting leadership. And this guy is he's the face of college sports, and he's sitting in the corner doing nothing with no plan. He has 1 to 2 media availabilities a year. He doesn't answer any question. Then he disappears into his cave, and I don't know what the heck he's doing. And my biggest problem, and it's not just my problem, you know who else is fired up about this? Coach K. You should have heard Coach K talk about this guy. Coach K, right to basically his face, was like, this guy doesn't know what the heck he's doing. Get him out. My problem is he just doesn't have an answer to anything, and he doesn't care. And, this isn't Little League. He's not doing this he gets paid millions of dollars to have the answers. I always say on this show, I don't have every single answer, but I'm not getting paid millions of dollars to have every single answer. And so it's so frustrating. I'm so glad Nick Saban's speaking out, and I hope he continues to speak out, and I hope he continues to push. And the same with Dabo Swinney. You might not like Dabo Swinney, but he is your friend on this one. Stick with Dabo Swinney. Listen to Dabo Swinney, because Dabo Swinney is fighting the same fight that you are for the future of college sports. Same with Lane Kiffin. Same with Coach K. Same with everybody that is speaking out about the leadership in college sports right now. And I think that's the biggest thing I take away from Nick Saban's conversation is, 1, he doesn't trust the leadership, but 2, I think he's fighting the same fight that we all are. I think he's worried about the future, and you guys and girls can say otherwise. You're worried about it too, because I hear about it all the time. And like I said a minute ago, I think we were all in favor of NIL with the way that it was intended. What none of us was in favor of is what it is now and what it could be 5 years from now. I mean, just think about it. I mean, I think about it all the time. This is going to sound crazy. Are college coaches, especially in football, are they even going to be recruiters anymore? Or is the entire recruiting class going to be put together by a collective? A collective puts aside this much money for this guy, this much money for that guy, this much money for that guy, and the coach's job is just to coach them, almost like the NFL. You got a player personnel department, which is a bunch of boosters, and then you got the head coach to actually coach them. What is the future and where are we going? I don't like it, and I give Nick Saban so much credit for speaking out about this. What I would finally say about it is, I'd be very careful if you're the rest of college football, because Nick Saban has said this a few times. I mean, if this is what we want college football to be, I don't know. Nick Saban has famously said that a few times. You know when he said that? He said it when all these new age, fast-tempo offenses were coming into college football about a decade ago. I'll never forget it. It was when Gus Malzahn was in the SEC and Kevin Sumlin had things rolling with Johnny Manziel. And Nick Saban says, is this what we want college football to be? Well, once Nick Saban realized, wait a second now, this ain't changing, what did he do? He hired Lane Kiffin, and the rest is history. Wasn't in favor of the transfer portal. Well, guess what? Alabama just picked up a 4th player in the transfer portal this offseason, this week. That's probably going to start for them next year. That was the worst thing you could have done with Nick Saban. My buddy Ryan Fowler said it best. He goes, so you're going to give Nick Saban all spring to evaluate his team, and then he can go cherry pick a player or two at a position that he wants, that's the scariest thing you could have done with Nick Saban. And I think what Nick Saban's saying is, okay, you want this to be that way. Every other thing I've done at Alabama, I've done it the best way that it can be done. And if you really want to turn NIL into this, we'll figure out a way to make it happen, but I ain't losing ground to anybody. And so it's an interesting conversation. But man, it's just, it just speaks to where we are in college sports, the lack of leadership, and I give Nick Saban credit for speaking out. That's what I want to do. You want to take a quick break? I do want to come back, and I do want to talk a little college hoops. Armando Bacot, star of the North Carolina Tar Heels, he announces he's coming back to college basketball next year. That feels important to me, as maybe the best player on the national runner-up is back. What does it mean? What does it mean for Carolina, NIL, all that good stuff? I'll be right back.